I've been there, done that. I've been there, done that. I've been there, done that. And still learning.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Been There, Done That, and Still Learning.
Still learning. Yes.
Still learning. So I'm your first host, Matt Marcotte.
And I'm your other host, Kevin Ertell.
Okay, and today we have a very, very special episode. We are turning the tables, the cameras, the microphones onto one of our very own, Kevin Ertell, because today is a special day. He has just released his first book. Hold on one second. I wore yellow so that I could actually match. That's right, I did. You're very welcome.
I wore black to match the title.
How you feel?
Yeah.
I think we had two very different perceptions of your book that apparently.
Yeah, maybe.
Yeah. The strategy trap. Okay. So Kevin, I'm going to give you a little bio on Kevin. So I have my notes here. Hold on.
Oh, boy.
So Kevin has spent over 3 decades in the trenches, my friend, guided global brands, scaled digital businesses, and coached high growth startups. He's led multi-billion-dollar operations at Nike, Sur La Table, Borders, and Tower Records. Still one of my favorite stories, by the way. He chaired the National Retail Federation's digital arm, shop.org, and built a reputation as a straight-talking catalyst for real change. So I don't know if anyone saw his head getting bigger as we were actually reading that, but pretty impressive, my friend, I have to say.
Stop it, yeah.
I love to be in your company. So his book, once again, Strategy Trap, buy it, hits the truth most companies encounter, which is strategy almost never fails because it's wrong. It fails because of execution or the lack of it. Right. So did I get that correctly, Kevin?
Yeah, you did very well. Well done.
Thank you. Thank you. Anything you'd like to add about your book or yourself for that matter?
I don't want to add anything about myself.
I'm just going to hold this up the entire episode.
Oh, my God. Yeah, look at that. Don't cover my name up, though.
Oh, sorry. Hold on. I didn't do my Vanna White.
Yes, very good.
There we go. Now, okay. Yep. All right. So, Kevin, what would be great for the people listening is if you could just take 30 seconds, maybe a minute, I'll give you that, and just kind of give us a little bit of an insight into what's at the heart of the book.
Yeah, I mean, most strategies fail. There's so much data about that. And the number one reason they fail is poor execution. There are a million books about how to write a strategy, and there's not that many about execution. And then even then, the books that are about execution are mostly written by academics and consultants. So I wanted to take kind of the operator's point of view and really talk about it from the point of view of someone who's been there, done that. Hey, that's like the name of our podcast.
Well done.
Yeah, I didn't even intend that. But I also didn't want it to be just my perspective. So I interviewed more than 60 operators of all sizes of companies, all varying types of industries. My goal was to get 1,000 years of experience and kind of bring that all together into one system that we could talk about that's just been proven on so many different fronts of some of the best practices of how to actually bring your strategy to life.
I have to tell you, that was one of the things that I immediately loved about your book was that it felt like, for lack of a better way of saying it was like an encyclopedia of brilliant leaders. Like, you don't have to read 28 different books. There's just incredible quotes and there's incredible concepts and from so many different people who are just in their own rights, just amazing. So the fact that you were able to collect all of those and then also just synthesize all those learnings was like, it's such a one-stop shop for leaders. It was one of the things I just absolutely loved.
I appreciate that. Yeah, I mean, and that's the thing too. There was so many commonalities. When you start to talk to the people who were really good at executing, there was a lot of things that came in common, and that's the genesis or the basis of the book, which is I put it into what I call the 6C system, which is just a way to distill all that down and sort of talk through all these techniques that people use in a way that you can do it in a systematic way to consistently execute well.
Yeah. So here's my question. Do you want to tell people what the 6 C's are, or do you want to make them buy the book to do it?
I don't think they're mutually exclusive.
Well, I hope not.
Yeah. Now, the 6 C's are, I broke it into 2 phases. So one phase is setting the stage, and then the second phase is showtime. And in setting the stage is the first three C's, and that is can't speak today, co-creation, clarity, and capacity. So co-creation is all about getting alignment and getting validation and then ultimately commitment. Clarity is, I think, really a huge driver of execution. People have to understand what it is, why it is, what it means to them, have some sort of meaning in it. And capacity is, you have to have room for it. I think this happens too often. We create a new strategy and try to dump it on the existing business. So that's setting the stage. And then showtime is communication, coordination, and coaching. So, communication is key to this as you're driving it through. Coordination, you got to sort of make sure you have a real plan and how all these various people and teams are going to work together. And then coaching is a subset of overall leadership, but it's that active subset that you really need because you're motivating, you're providing incentives, and you're fixing problems along the way and pivoting where you need to pivot. And that is the essence of coaching. So that is the system. It all sort of fits together.
Yeah, I first of all, I love a good framework. Let's just start there for a second, right? But I don't like frameworks that feel trite. And I think what I love about the 6 C's is that it's very actionable, but there's also, it's a journey, right? It's a sequential, it's like you can't start at coaching if you haven't done the first 5.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
So I think for leaders, it's just really a great mindset to think about the journey that you're taking your teams on and yourself to ensure flawless execution, and that you can't skip steps and you have to follow, at least initially, right? Is that fair enough to say?
Yeah, I think you have to sort of think through the whole thing, and then sometimes you move back and forth
Yes.
throughout them. I mean,
to
there's
tweak or to
elements
change,
of
yeah.
co-creation that happen along the way, and you sort of move around through it. But you have to have a complete view of all of those 6 C's as you're going to execute, because that's what it takes to get real humans to all work together on the same page towards a common goal.
I love that. Okay, so the big question, why now? What problem or problems did you see so consistently that it made you feel this book was necessary?
Yeah, it's like, what do they say? What's the best time to plant a tree 20 years ago, and the second best time is today?
Yeah.
Sort of like that. I mean, I think this has been a perennial problem. I mean, it's like these kind of things happen always. Just people get all enamored with the idea, and they don't take all the extra effort it takes to actually bring a bunch of people along on the idea. So that's a little bit of why now. Also, just had the time and space to be able to finally put this together. But that was why. I mean, let me ask you, though, because you wrote a book recently, quite brilliant in its own right.
I did, yes.
It's one of my top books of the year.
I know, I was so honored.
Well, it's well-deserving. I love your book.
Thank you.
What made you feel the need to write your book?
Yeah, for me, I felt like I had been in a place where, running brands like yourself for like 30 something years. And then my last stop when I was at Salesforce, I was across all industries. And so in the capacity that myself and my team played, we were in boardrooms with C-level leaders across multiple different industries. So let's just say over 200 and 300 companies, let's say over the course of the 3.5 years. And it just became so clear to me that the challenges of leadership are complex and challenging, but the investment people make in leading others has diminished.
Yeah.
And I think we've gotten so focused on tactics and metrics and short-term investment that things that when I started coming up in the world, working for a May company, which was the best trainer in the department store world, where they just put you through like going through college again.
Yeah.
I benefited from that type of exposure, and I benefited from the spider webbing of a career where you see different perspectives. And so for me, I just felt like there was an opportunity to share what I had learned from incredible leaders and being part of incredible brands, and really had synthesized into a philosophy around how companies are able to not only just sustain, but to scale and to be profitable over time. And that's a real focus on what they believe, clear cultures, North Stars, for clarity, your second C, and how you need to invest in your internal customer before you can invest in your external customer. Because if you don't have that investment, people don't reflect what they don't get. And so, yeah, I just felt like it was a good time, especially in the world we're in right now. and there's so much upheaval and how companies and brands and things do things.
Yeah, I so love that. You know, I have a quote in my book too that from Doug Conant, who was the CEO of Campbell's, and he said, if I remember it right, in order to win in the marketplace, you have to win first in the workplace.
Yeah. Yes. 100%.
You know, and I think that's it.
Yeah.
You get caught up, like to your point, if everyone's caught up on spreadsheets and, you know, reports and metrics, and you forget that there's this human element to it all, that you're not doing it without them, even in the world of AI. That
Absolutely.
And I think that's a commonality across both of our books, is they're really just about people.
Yeah, and I think what it takes to succeed, right? And when we talk about whether it's strategy to execution or being able to scale and create something that has legs that last for a long time, your point, it's like the investments that you make and the right investments and at the right time with the right people, it makes all the difference, right? It's not a one kind of stop shop as far as like we do one thing and then everything else flows from that. There's so many parts to actually getting it right.
Yeah. Are you saying that people are complicated?
No, I mean you and I are a little complicated. Yes, they're complex. How about let's go
Complex? Yes, that's so much better. Yeah.
Yeah. All right. So I'm turning it back on you. So thanks for that. But I'm going to turn it back on you. This is your episode. So I'm curious, when you think about like leaders, right? We just started talking about leaders. What do you think, based on your experience and all the conversations and interviews that you had for this book, what do you think leaders misunderstand most about execution?
I think the biggest thing is that you have to slow down to speed up. You know, there is this drive, and all of us type A people, you and me included, you know, it's like you just want to get to action, you know?
Yeah. Yep.
But the reality is, when you have to pull a bunch of people together, that if you don't slow down up front, you end up slowing down later in a much worse way, you know?
Yes.
And I kind of think about it like, you know, if you're on a road and you're on like these curvy roads and you'll see a big sign that says slow down, right? That's like kind of it. And if you just go plowing through it, you're going to end up going off the side of the road. And what did you really accomplish there? So it goes against, I think, a lot of corporate culture to say, hey, we got to slow down for a second and make sure we pull all these pieces together. But that is the fastest way to get the highest amount of results. Yeah. And I will tell you, like, of all the people I talked to, all those 60 people, far and away, that was the number one bit of advice I got from people.
Was the slow down.
Slow down to speed up. Mm-hmm. I heard that over and over and over.
It is so amazing, though, to your point, like why more companies I think are hearing this, I think a lot of people would say, yes, they'll nod their head, they'll agree, but yet it's not happening all the time.
Yeah. I just think it's this bias for action, you know, you hear about. And by the way, I don't think slowing down to speed up means like, oh, we're just going to take our time with this. It just means focus all that energy and extra effort into setting things up so that when you like really kick it in, you can go. So I think it's a bit of a, you know, helping people understand that doesn't mean less action. In fact, I would argue it means more action, like really dive in and figure 100%. This stuff out, you know, but put your people in a position that they can be really, really successful because you've done the work up front. You've made the hard decisions up front too, by the way, so that they don't have to make them later and end up going off the path, you know?
Couldn't agree more.
Yeah. What do you think leaders misunderstand? You know, you talk a lot about compliance and commitment, and I talk a lot about commitment too. Where do you think leaders misunderstand?
Here's what I'd say. I think it's the difference between push and pull, right? And I think you can't demand commitment the way you can demand compliance. So when you think about it, compliance responds to structure, but commitment responds to meaning. Right. And so I think when you actually think about short term, as we just said, like the bias to action, like you were just talking about, compliance tends to be very prevalent in organizations that only think in short-term sprints. Yep. And committed organizations, as you said, I use the term front-loading effort, right? So you have to front-load, as you said, up front. And well, I guess that's the point of the word. But anyways, you have to front-load the work to create the conditions, as you said, where people will then just do incredible things in the back end. And so I think that people don't understand that the two are not interchangeable.
Yeah.
The compliance can get you short-term results. Like I remember back in the day, I'm sure you probably heard this or said this, when you'd see anyone can have a great quarter.
Yeah.
But it's the people that actually lap themselves year over year as leaders and the results that are the true incredible leaders, right? And to do that, that's not compliance.
Right.
Or it's compliance that leads to burnout because, of what it takes to have compliance. So I think that's where people get wrong about it.
No, I think that's exactly right. And since I know how much you love sports metaphors.
Oh my God, I'm so excited. This is our first one. We're at 12 minutes in?
Yeah. Yeah, it's like if you're at a basketball that has a long season, you can win one game. Any team can win one game.
Yep.
But if you want to come out at the end of the season with the best record in the championship, then you have to think for the long haul and position yourself for that.
Absolutely. Thank you for doing that.
How did that work? Was that good? Yeah.
It was a great shot of testosterone. Thank you. All right, let's back to this. Lessons learned the hard way.
I think we should squeeze in a sports metaphor in every episode, is what I'm thinking.
Or at least every 10 minutes in an episode. I mean, you let me know.
I'm game.
I have a good badminton one for later.
Oh, excellent.
All right. So, Kevin, you have been an operator, as you said about the book, the kind of the angle that you took it from. You've been an operator and an advisor. So this is more of a looking back and thinking about your own career. What's something that you personally got wrong about execution earlier in life?
Yeah, I think I was bad at communication for a long time and not understanding, all the dynamics of communication and really how bad we humans are at communicating. One example I use all the time, you've been in like a bar or some loud environment and you're talking to somebody, right? And
now this is an analogy, a metaphor. I totally can get.
No, you're into this one. All right, you got it.
Okay, hold on. Yep,
You got it.
Yep,
Okay.
I'm there. Yeah.
So you're talking to somebody and they're talking to you and you're not really hearing everything. You're hearing a lot of it, but when they smile, you smile. When they laugh, you laugh, but at the end, you kind of got what they said, kind of didn't, right? But when you flip that around, you go, okay, now you're the person talking. When you're talking, you understand everything you're saying, obviously. And guess what? They're smiling when you smile. They're laughing when you laugh. So they obviously got everything you said, right?
Yeah.
And I think that's how I thought about it. I communicated something at work. Everybody got exactly what I meant. And I didn't really understand all the dynamics behind the fact that they didn't hear everything probably the first time I said it. They didn't fully take it in. And when we have to communicate anything, really, but if we're trying to communicate a strategy to somebody, then it's kind of like that. You can't just expect that the one time you communicated it in some, effectively loud environment, because when people are at work, there's all these other things going on. They didn't take it all in. They didn't get everything. You have to actually talk about it a lot.
Yes.
And in a lot of different ways. And you have to also have a feedback loop. So you listen, all these elements to kind of get a message through has to be super, super intentional and take some time, and really think it through. And so I think I very often early in my career just said it one time and expected everybody to get it.
That's a good one. I totally agree. And by the way, I did understand what you were just saying, so you don't have to.
Oh, all right, cool. Well, I got all the signals.
Improved. You read a book.
What's something you'd go back and kind of redo now that you understand beliefs and meanings and how they shape behavior?
Because belief and commitment are a team sport, so to speak, right? It requires everyone to be bought in.
Totally, a sports analogy. I'm just saying.
I'm trying. That's as far as I got. Because of that, what I realized early on in my career is that I tried to be the hero too much. And I think for me, and I think a lot of leaders fall to this, which is you think you're supposed to know. When the word leader, you being in charge, means you have the answers, you have the direction, you have the knowledge, you hold on to it. You're the person that doesn't need to ask anybody else. Mm-hmm. And that's how value is derived, right? I mean, I'm not saying it is, but that's how you think is like, and it's a little bit about that ego, which is this great definition of ego that I learned years ago, which is being right, being in control, and looking good. And if you're concerned with those three things, you're dead in the water, right? Yeah. And so I think what I learned over time was my job as a leader was to create the conditions for everybody else to bring their best. So I succeeded because other people succeeded, not I was the lone wolf. And so when you do that, the only way to do that effectively over time is to make sure everyone believes the same things you do, or you're all aligned around the same vision and the same North Star and have the capabilities and all those different things. And so, so I think for me, that was an early kind of mistake that I made, was thinking that the way you're successful as a leader is by being the person who's the best at everything and has all the answers.
Yep.
I mean, it's true, but
I mean, you are, but yeah.
Thank you. Well done.
But as long as you don't think it, you're good.
Totally. Well, you don't record on a podcast and tell everybody that you think that about yourself. Okay. So let's talk about behaviors a little bit. So I'd love to get from you one leadership behavior that you think kills execution, yet, and this is important, yet still gets rewarded in many organizations.
Just one, huh?
You can share as many as you like. It's your episode, Kevin.
This might sound counterintuitive a little bit, but I think one of them that does is being overly focused on metrics, and too many metrics and too many short-term results. You kind of hit on it earlier a little bit. That gets rewarded a lot of time, but it ultimately kills execution. You know, you're powering the team to get some quick result. You're saying something like, I hate this phrase so much, we're just going to have to build the plane while we're flying it, right?
It sounds like such a hero thing to do.
It does, but let me ask you, would you get on a plane if they were still building it?
No.
No. But we do that to our teams. Like, that happens all the time, and they demand that, and they might get a short-term result by doing that, But ultimately, it's a death trap, and that's what happens with execution all the time, is this drive for short-term kills the long-term. But it does get rewarded a lot of time.
It does,
And
yeah.
it
I love
even feeds into your point about ego,
But I love the whole bias to action that you talked about earlier. Just keeps coming up, right? And it's such a myth. Like, it's such a false positive, so to speak. Like, action doesn't mean momentum, doesn't mean success. It just means action, right?
It's just flailing about.
Yeah.
But it does get rewarded a lot of time because something's happening, And so,
Absolutely.
but it doesn't get you there. What I'm curious on your take on a leadership behavior that sort of drains belief and engagement.
Yeah. This one might be, I'm curious to get your perspective on this too. I actually think two things, they're connected, which is, the first is lack of alignment. And but I mean that the idea of like what people believe, what they say, and what they do. Because we know, like, behavior is always proof of belief, right? The actual thing you're doing is what you really actually believe.
Right.
But so many times people say the right thing, they put the right words out there, they have the strategy, they have listened to stakeholders, they know what they're supposed to say, but they're not bought into it. And so there's a misalignment between what we're going to do and what we actually do, whether that's investments, whether that's actually output, whether that's tools, capability, whatever those things are. So I think that alignment piece is super important. And I think the kind of the companion piece to that, for me at least, is leaders who allow substandard performance to exist too long. Because what happens is, right, we all know this, your best talent sees, well, everyone sees it, but your best talent's like, well, if they're not addressing that, what the heck am I doing? And either they disengage, they leave, they whatever, right? And so I think leaders have an absolute responsibility to their organizations to play at the highest common denominator, not the lowest, where other people have to overcompensate for poor performance.
Yeah, I so agree with that. And I had that experience early on in my career, where I had a manager. I was like one of the top performers on the team, and he just let these other people get away with crap, and I saw how bad it demotivated me. And it makes me think, there's this quote from Danny Meyer, in The Restaurateur, and
I love
he had
Danny
this
Meyer,
quote about culture. And his quote about culture, I think, is so powerful, because he said, your culture is the sum of all of the behaviors, all the desired behaviors or the wanted behaviors that you celebrate, minus the unwanted behaviors that you tolerate.
Mm,
And I think that's a
I
really
love that. It's
powerful,
powerful. That's
quote.
powerful.
And it speaks to what you just said, I mean, like if you really sort of think about that, what are all those unwanted behaviors that you tolerate? Which is easy to do
Yeah.
sometimes because it's just like it's hard to like constantly be on that, right? It takes a lot of intentional effort, but your
100%.
best players feel it immediately.
Yeah. And it's funny you say that because I do think the idea, like, it is hard. And so, you and I can talk about this now in this conversation, but we've lived this for, decades. So it's not like we're just kind
Yeah.
of academically saying, oh, leaders should do this. But I remember I used to tell people that would work for me, especially younger leaders as they were kind of emerging or being developed. If you're doing your job correctly as a leader, you're exhausted when you get home at night. And exhausted in a good
It's
way
true.
because you're doing good work, but it's hard work. It's not easy work. All right, Kevin, we're going to go back to the strategy trap. So why do you think smart, well-intentioned leaders, because there are many of them out there, right, keep stepping into the same execution traps over and over again?
Yeah. I think a big part of it is that conventional business wisdom is all wrong. It's some of the things we talked about all the time, but it's these things that are common. You got to go fast. You got to get action right away. That's conventional wisdom, but it's not what works. You have to slow down to speed up.
Yeah.
We talk about you have to get alignment, but I think one of the things you have to do to get alignment and commitment is invite the detractors in, not push them away. That's hard, but like that's how you're going to have to get there. There's just over and over. You have to, in order to get capacity, you have to subtract things. And that's hard too. You can't just add all the time, and there's a tendency to just keep adding. So I think a lot of conventional wisdom that we all grew up with and we see from other leaders over the years is the problem. And again, like the stat I saw was 90% of strategies fail.
Which is frightening.
It's pretty predominant wisdom out there that keeps doing the same thing over and over again.
Yeah.
And people grow up and they learn, and it's all these things we talk about today that are all the wrong things that they just keep learning how to do, regardless of the results.
They keep showing up with the old paradigms for new problems, right?
Yeah, yep. And so, I mean, what do you see kind of that leaders still default to control rather than empowerment? Because I think that's pretty common too.
100%. I mean, I think you and I, and it's funny, you said earlier on about the perception that it's faster to not front load, where actually it's not, right? The reality is you actually end up cleaning up in aisle 7 later on in life versus earlier on, right? So I think it's the same thing, which is it's that bias to action. And I do think people feel like control feels safer and faster and more measurable. And I think that goes back to the metrics that you were talking about and how there's so much focus on metrics. And I think I love metrics, but defining what metrics mean, like what metrics, like when we say result, what results are we actually measuring? And there are many results
not
you
just
can actually
measuring for
measure.
the sake of measuring.
Exactly. Or just the old ones, to your point, or the ones that are like outputs. What about the inputs, right? Are we measuring those too? And I think the other piece, and this goes back to your point, I think this ties very much into what you just said. The reality is many leaders were promoted because of their ability to be problem solvers.
Yep.
And so bringing that old behavior to new ways or to a new role almost helps them internally feel like they reinforce the identity of I know. So there's this Stephen Drotter, who was the Crotonville, formed Crotonville GE back in the day. He wrote a book called The Leadership Pipeline, but it's not a straight line, it's a zigzag line. It's the idea of the individual contributor, manager of others, manager of managers, blah, blah, blah. But he said the success lies in the turn. If you don't have the skill set for the one you're going into, you will just do the new job with your old skills.
Yep.
And so I think we see a lot of that happening where people are just kind of reverting back to what made them famous. And in this case, like I was saying, a lot of it can be because they knew the answers, right? So in the book, I talk about great leaders ask great questions. They don't tell, they ask. And if you're in control, you're telling. If you're in empowerment, you're asking.
Yeah, and that probably goes a little bit to your push-pull thing you talked about earlier, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's talk about signals in the room. If someone dropped us into a random leadership meeting tomorrow, what signals would tell you, Kevin Ertell, whether a strategy will actually get executed or not?
It's I think it goes a little bit to what you're saying. I would be looking to see if people are curious and if they're listening. Because I don't think you can be successful in getting a group of people to do anything if you're not curious and you're not a good listener and you're not really trying to understand others before you're trying to force your point of view on them. And I think that's what it comes down to. If people can't hear each other, if they can't understand each other's perspectives in that leadership room, there's no chance it's going beyond that.
So true.
Yeah.
So true.
What about you? What culture signals?
Yeah, I think honestly it's very similar, different words, but I think the concept is similar. So I think you have to watch how people show up in the room when there's risk.
Yeah.
Right? When things get uncomfortable. So, I've worked with a lot of teams where they're newly forming as executive teams and they're like in the honeymoon phase and they're like, oh my God, we get along so well, we love each other. And I'm always waiting for the moment where there's conflict.
Yep.
Because how people handle conflict to me or risk tells me how committed they are or how compliant. So for example, the people that speak, does someone speak first or last? So people who speak last are usually trying to scan the room to understand what's the way they're supposed to answer, right?
Yep.
What happens when conflict comes up? Do people shy away from it, or they're in it trying to solve for the problems? Or are they looking for the answer that somebody wants, right? The nodding of heads when someone talks about, the whole thing, right? And so, what happens when the leader leaves the room?
Yep.
Do people engage further and keep the work going? Or do they just stop and wait for the leader to come back to tell them what to do? And so I think when you start to see that when things get messy, people's kind of commitment to the process or commitment to the vision or commitment to the strategy or commitment to the execution is all pretty much based on those types of, I think, signals for me.
Yeah, I love that. I think that's so important. And, have you heard of Google's Project Aristotle?
Tell me more.
Okay. So they did this study to figure out what were the best teams and combinations of teams and people. And they did all this stuff. They looked at diversity of, all sorts of approaches, ideas, whatever. They got all sorts of different types of teams together.
Yeah.
And what they ended up finding was that the best predictor of team success was the ones that had the most psychological safety. And I think that speaks to your concept of risk. Like when there's something risk going on, are people willing to talk and express point of view and be vulnerable and willing to be wrong? And that goes back to being curious for others. So I think it goes exactly to what you're saying. But I thought that study was super interesting on that front, and I think I've experienced that. Those teams I've been
100%.
on, for sure, way better work together.
Yeah. There's it's funny you say that because there's this framework that I'm using with a team right now, which is about psychological safety, but it also, see on the y-axis, it's psychological safety. On the x-axis, it's drive. So teams that have high psychological safety but low drive are the ones that we all love each other because there's no real right. People that have low psychological safety and have high drive are the ones that literally are afraid they're going to lose their job every 5 seconds and create turf wars and fiefdoms, and they always, it's like a Game of Thrones, right? And so to your point, that psychological safety is so important. And it has to be married with the fact they have drive, which is the commitment to wanting to be excellent, right? They can apply the psychological safety to something.
Yes. Yeah, that makes a ton of sense. I love that.
Yeah. All right. So let's talk about, sorry. Did you want to say something else?
No. Just I thought that was very interesting. Yeah.
Well, we can say that twice. All right. So let's talk about creating conditions at work. So you talk a lot about, in your book, creating conditions for execution, right?
Yep.
So what do you think that means at the everyday level, right? So there's a lot of big ideas, but on the everyday, block and tackling, what does that look like for you?
I think one of the things that's important to remember is that there are tens of thousands of decisions that get made every day about your team all over the place. And creating the conditions for best execution at everyday level is making sure that those decisions are made in the same context so people are pushing forward in the same way. And that does speak to a lot of the work you have to do up front. How clear have you been with, what the North Star is and what we're measuring and what our objectives are? Do you have clear guiding principles that people can use to make those decisions? And are there clear constraints so they understand what they're working within?
Yeah.
That kind of being really thoughtful about those kind of things allows people at an everyday level to supercharge because they feel now very confident that they're able to make decisions that are going to work in context with everybody else to get to the goal. So I think it comes down to that, which is easy to say and super, super hard to do. I get it, but it's worth the effort in my view.
Yeah. And do you think it's like a fundamental shift in how leaders have to show up to get to that place?
It is, because first of all, you have to spend all the time thinking up front and making sure that you've got all this level of clarity and you've got guiding principles and constraints. But then you as a leader have to live those every single day. You can't deviate from them. Every time you deviate from them, you're sending a signal to your team about all the decisions they have to make that causes them to have less confidence in those decisions because you just exhibited a different behavior. So I do think that it takes super intentional effort and reinforcing it, by the way. You have to say it over and over again. I'm working here right now with the Minnesota Timberwolves, and the CEO is really good about that. He has some key principles, and he reinforces them all the time. When he makes a decision or he pushes somebody, he's like, "Remember, I said this, and I'm backing you up. I'm supporting you." And so I think it's that kind of behavior that is critical to keep it going. And that may hold. You talk about belief all the time in an organization, but what are the conditions or behaviors that allow that to take hold?
Yeah. I mean, people are like, did you guys write the same book? Because I feel like so much of this is, as we've discussed previously, off camera, that there's so much alignment, which I guess is a good thing. Otherwise, we're like, I don't agree with that at all. I think, I use obviously this framework in the book called Hard Head Hands. But if I actually think about it as far as how belief takes hold, I think the first piece is that meaning is made personal, meaning that the vision, the strategy, the North Star is people see themselves in it. They understand it. They believe in it. They understand the nuance of it. It's not just a poster on the wall. They really get the point, right? And you see this a lot in startups because everyone's there for the same reason. They've all drunk the Kool-Aid, so to speak, right? So I think the first part is the meaning is made personal. I think the second is that people are brought to the table, and you talk about this in your book a lot, that co-creation piece is so important. So they're engaged and they're given a voice, they're given agency, they're given ownership in the creation of all of it and where it's relevant, right? So they have skin in the game, and that makes such a difference. And this is you're talking about in your book all the time. And then the third part, and we talked about this a little bit before, is that behaviors match the message.
Yes.
So what you just said about someone saying something and then actually acting differently is exactly that. Yep. And I think that is so important to just keep reiterating those things, that you have to be really clear about what you believe, what you say, and what you do, because it's a circle, and the beliefs show up in your behaviors, and behaviors then reform people's beliefs.
Yep. Yeah. They're tightly tied together, and it's super easy to fall off the path if you don't stay really on it.
That's right. Okay. So we're coming to the end, my friend.
Oh, I'm sad.
So one of the reasons that you and I wanted to do this show together is that our philosophies and books, as we're now learning, do not contradict each other. No. They only complement each other, but also address the same themes. So strategy and execution, belief and culture, they're all part of the same conversation, right? So when you combine them, leaders get movement, not just messaging. And so I'm curious from your perspective to share with the listeners. We've talked about things like this, obviously, over and over again. Why do you think combining these views is so important now, but also just the success of kind of what we talk about in our books?
Yeah, I think it's because it's really about people. I think both of us, the end result, we talk about the outcomes and the benefits of focusing on people in the right way and really understanding how people communicate, how people work together, combine their efforts. And that is ultimately what it takes to succeed in a business, in an organization of any type. And so while we come at it, I think, from a little bit of different angles, we're both sort of ultimately generating the same result. And I think we both understand that we get better success for everyone involved when we set the right conditions for people to be great, and everybody wants to be great. I mean, who doesn't want to be successful,
Right.
And so I think that's the combo there helps round it out, I think, maybe is the way I would look at it. What about you?
I agree. Yeah, no, I 100% agree. I mean, for that shocking. But I think,
We should set up a fight at some point somewhere.
oh my God, let's have our own conflict. That's actually episode 2. So please come back and listen to us. That's like dogs. No, I think nothing that's meaningful is one-dimensional, right? And so even just in the conversations you and I have had, just as peers, as just like people who've gotten to know each other, I've learned so much from just the way you think about it. Even if it's the same topic and we come out the same, to your point, it's different angles. And, for me, when I think about my career, I've worked in retail, let's just say, for 30 something years, but I've worked department store and specialty and technology and luxury and aspirational and private and public. And you've worked in so many different sides. And each one of those angles has taught you something different about the same central idea, which is consumer behavior, brands, products, customer experience, whatever the nucleus is. But to your point, like the way that Borders and the way that Nike go about it may be very different because of who they serve and what they sell and all those things. But I think just adds to the richness and gets us to, as you said, to the better outcome. And so for me, I think it's not about repeating each other, because to your point, it's not the same, but it's the same. We have a fundamental agreement on the foundational ideas. And I think I learn a lot from just the way your experience and the way you think about stuff.
Yeah, as well. I learned from you.
Duh. No.
Yeah.
No, it's true. It's. I think people have to be careful of being in an echo chamber.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And you talked about diversity early on.
Yeah, diversity is critical. I mean, I always am learning from people who are different from me. I mean, that's, it's amazing. And as much as you and I agree on things, we're very different people. We've got different backgrounds. And so we do push each other and learn different things. And it's the same with lots of people in my life. So I love that.
Yeah. But even when you said earlier about bringing people in who disagree with you.
Yes.
People are like, I don't know if I want to do that, right? Those are the people, to your point earlier, that help you to move faster and further, because they're the ones that are pointing out the areas which aren't so clear.
Oh,
or aren't right, for that matter.
Right. If you find one person that disagrees with it, they're probably not alone. They just might be the most vocal person.
Right.
So, and oh man, sometimes I'm like, oh God, do I have to go through this again with so-and-so? But in the end, that it always comes out better. It's painful sometimes.
Right. You got thick skin to be a leader.
Yeah, but
it's true. That's true. It's painful, but it's right.
Yeah, and that's how you get pushed into different ideas. So I love that. So Matt,
oh yep,
our little thing here is that we've been there, done that, but we're still learning.
Yes.
So what have you learned since we last got together?
So I mean, I learned just so much in this last 43 minutes. I just did a video on this. Well, first of all, I have to thank my friend Kevin Ertell for pushing me to get on TikTok. Let's just
You're like a
clear.
huge influencer now.
I wouldn't say that, but I don't know. But the point is, thank you for doing that. Like, you pushed me. But and so one of the things I just did a video on was, I was talking to this person last week, and I told you like the whole thing about like hard head hands and like the frameworks. And that, for me, they're all kind of like interconnected. Like and for your point about the 6 C's, like there's a cohesive, collaborative, collective way of operating that's not, you can't pull them apart specifically. So she told me about this word, this Japanese word. It's called kokoro. I hope I'm not butchering that. I apologize if I am, but it's not directly translatable, but essentially it means mind, spirit, and heart all connected, not as separate things, as one. And that everything flows from those 3 things together. And so for me, when I think about the work that we do, and whether it's strategy, execution, development, leadership, you have to be holistic in your approach, get it all done.
Yeah. Yeah.
And all connected and all aligned. Otherwise, it just doesn't work.
It's funny you mention a word because I got sucked into this article about words that really drew me in. But it was this article about language and how the language we use for thinking is largely connected to walking. So we say things like, by the way, which the genesis of that is like next to a path. Even when we say, of course, it's about walking. You're off track. Our minds race.
Oh, that's so funny.
Our thoughts wander, right? We arrive at conclusions. There's like all these things. Even when we say like, walk me through your thinking, they're all related to walking. So here's what's really cool about this. I thought, wow, that's really interesting, first of all. But this article went further and then talked about this research that's a couple of different researches that showed that our most creative thinking comes when we're walking.
Interesting.
So
And why?
like
Did they say
fascinating?
why?
It didn't say why. It just the studies showed that like walking, like go for a walk and you'll start to get this really creative thinking. And
So interesting.
and it's probably been a truism forever, which is how
Yeah.
all these little like sayings got enveloped into the language around thinking. So I thought that's kind of fascinating.
Oh, I love that. I never had thought about it, but it makes total sense. The word part of it too. But
Yeah,
and yet here we are sitting in front of computers all day, right?
we need to get out walking more.
Exactly. I love that. All right. Well, that's a great one. Okay.
Interesting.
So let us end this episode, our very special episode.
Oh,
Once again, the strategy trap. No, I match. Thank you very much. The strategy trap
impressive.
is out now. Kevin, where can people buy this book?
where books are sold, as it turns out.
But where is that these days?
Yeah, I mean, you can buy it at any of the places like Amazon, Target, Walmart, online. And then there's it's going to be in some bookstores. It's distributed by Simon & Schuster, so it just kind of depends on where they were able to sell it. But for sure, you can get it on Amazon, Powell's Books online, Target, Walmart, all those, Barnes &
Okay.
Noble.
Well, however you all get it, get it. I'm telling
Yes.
you, it is, as someone who's old and curmudgeon and crusty as I am as a leader, it's fast. I learned so much. Like I said, I started with a highlighter and it may have run out halfway through. But my point is there's so much incredible wisdom and it's all practical as well. As you said, Kevin, it's written from the point of view of someone who wants to get, I won't say the bad word, things done. So The Strategy Trap, Why Companies Fail at Execution and How to Get It Right by Kevin Ertell. Go get the book. Congratulations, Kevin. Welcome to the Authors Club. It's such an exciting place to be.
Where's your book?
So
Hold your
proud
book
of
up.
you.
Do you have it?
Oh, I do have it, actually, matter of fact. Oh, what?
Yeah,
What?
hold that up.
I don't have this.
come
You mean
on.
this book?
Oh.
This one? They're right next to each other. Hello.
Look
Oh,
at
wait,
that.
I should do this. It's your week. This is my
I
week.
mean, they
Your
just
week.
sit them right next to each other. They look good together.
Anyway, all right. If you like what you heard today, please follow us. Been there, done that, and still learning. Wherever podcasts are found, next to his book. But thanks for joining us. And Kevin, what a huge success! What a huge accomplishment! And everyone, if you want strategies that not only last but get executed flawlessly, buy the book.
Thank you, my friend. Great to see you.
Great to see you too. Have a great week, everyone.
I've been there, done that. Yeah. I've been there, done that. Yeah. I've been there, done that. And still